ask you a question right now, and I'm going to ask it to you several times tonight. Have you ever committed yourself to something so much that people thought you were crazy? Have you ever had an idea so bold or been so bold in something that people thought you were crazy? I think it was 85, there was a kid, he was in high school, his name was Marty McFly. And he had a friend that was a lot older than he was, this crazy guy with white hair that was wiry, with always a crazy look in his eyes, named Doc Brown. This washed up doctor that was probably 40 years older than Marty was. And Doc had this idea that there was something called time travel. And Marty doesn't really hang out for Doc because of this, but he hangs out for Doc because he's just this crazy guy with a lot of other inventions with a really big amplifier that he can play the guitar on. And if you don't know by now, this is Back to the Future. But Marty is in high school and he's always late for class because he usually goes to Doc's house in the morning. Early on in the movie, you see that he comes to class or gets to school like tardy again. It's 4 days in a row, and the principal stops and says, "Here's your tardy slip. Have you been hanging out with Doc Brown some more?" And Marty says, "Yeah." And so then the principal says, "Marty, I'd be careful with Doc Brown. He's crazy. If you hang out with him, you're going to get hurt." And so tonight's lesson is about Noah and boldness in the faith of the unseen. And we'll see how that story applies in a second. So again, have you ever committed to something so much that people thought you were crazy? When we think about Noah, of course, we think about the flood. You know, there's that song we sing about, build your ark, there's going to be a floody, floody. You know what I'm talking about. A great VBS song. But I'm afraid a lot of times when we talk about Noah, that's all it ever is a VBS story. And to really talk about Noah as adults, we need to understand something about the world that's different today. You see, Noah was part of this earth that looked totally different than where we're standing today. There's no clouds in the sky, which is typically a good thing at Devo in the dark, but I kind of wish there was some clouds tonight because that's something that Noah never would have seen. I'm about to say some things that are like scientific, not facts, but opinions. If you have any questions about it, you can talk to me after or send me a message or something. I'll give you some information about it. But in Genesis 1, chapter 7, we read that God creates a firmament between the waters. That's the waters of the earth and the waters of the sky. That leads a lot of scientists to believe in something called this canopy theory. And I'm sure you've heard this before, and if not, the simple version of it is that basically before the flood, there was no rain, there was temperate climates, there was pretty much perfect weather all the time because of this firmament that separated, created a canopy that was basically like a really thick atmosphere. It protected people from the sun's UV rays, it kept them healthier. And that's why we see in Genesis 5 when we're seeing the genealogies from Adam to Noah. We see people like Enosh and Jared and Methuselah and Enoch, who all lived over 900 years old. And that was partly because of this canopy. It didn't rain because we see in Genesis 2, verses 5 and 6, we get this idea of a mist condition. It says, water rose from the ground, mist rose from the ground to take care of the plants. And so this pre-flood world was totally different than what we're used to. And so when we talk about Noah in a second about building an ark, like we'll see why that's even more radical than I think a lot of times we're led to believe. But the story of Noah starts in chapter 6 of Genesis, about verse 12, I believe it is. And that's when God comes to Noah. But before that, in the beginning of chapter 6, we read that God, and in the ESV it says, is disgraced at his creation. He can't stand what he's seen the creation become. In these probably 1,000 years since Adam and Eve, a sixth of the time that the world has probably been in existence goes through in the first 5 chapters of Genesis. And in that time, the world becomes so wicked that there is no one righteous. And then we read, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah and his family are the only righteous family literally in the world. So first point, I guess, is that if you ever feel like you're the only person that believes what you believe, hold fast to know that in this moment there's 50, 60 of us here that all are here because we believe the same thing. But that's a sub point. Carrying on with the story. And so Noah is 500 or a little older when God comes to him. He's had his kids, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, at 500. And then we read a little later in chapter 6 that God comes to Noah and says, Noah, you're the only righteous man. Your family is the only righteous family. And I honestly regret that I've created everything. And because of that, I'm not going to wipe away just every human from existence. I'm going to wipe the face of the earth from every living thing that I've created. But you and your family, and I'm going to send a male and a female of every animal to you. And then I'm going to send 7 pairs of every clean animal to you. And I'm going to send 7 pairs of every bird of the heaven to you. And all of you are going to get on a boat that you're going to make. It's going to be 300 cubits long. It's going to be 50 cubits wide. It's going to be 30 cubits tall. You're going to make it out of gopher wood. You're going to use pitch to cover the holes to make it float. And you're going to do this, and this is going to save you. And that's all that God tells Noah. And Noah just has to have this bold faith in something he has no idea of what's coming. It's not like he's going to be surprised by rain, because rain doesn't even enter into his head. He doesn't know what rain is. So if God says it's going to rain, Noah, you better build a boat. Noah's like, what does that mean? Because he's never seen this. And so not only does he have to have faith in something that he doesn't know is going to happen, he has to have faith in something that has never happened before. And so Noah does it. Noah's got this faith. He's bold in his faith. And he starts building the ark. And this is where I kind of like to think this would make a good movie, and not like that movie with Russell Crowe in it that I've never seen because I think it's weird. I don't know. But I think this would probably make a funny movie, because Noah's got to be just like Doc Brown. He's got to be this crazy guy. I picture him with long, white, wiry hair, with this crazy look in his eyes, always thinking, guys, something's going to happen. We got to have this boat. And probably there's not an ounce of water for hundreds of miles. And he's building this huge ark. And you got to be thinking, people are walking by like, oh, there's Noah again, building an ark. What a crazy lunatic he is. Or, there's got to be people telling Shem, Ham, and Japheth, now, son, I don't think you should hang out with Noah anymore. I know he's your dad, but if you hang around him, you're going to get hurt because he is crazy. And so, maybe not a whole movie about that, because that would kind of get boring after a while. But maybe like a 15-minute TV show or something where you just see people making fun of Noah because he's just a crazy guy. Because that's happening. I know we're all Christians here and we're all supposed to have a Christ-like attitude, but it'd be hard not to make fun of a guy that's so committed to something that's never going to happen. At least that's what we think. And so Noah deals with it for 100 years, for 50, 75, 100 years, depending on how you're going to look at it and what different people say. But he builds the ark. And up until the day that all the animals get there, people think he's crazy. Then all the animals, then here's the second funny part of the show, right? Is that for years, Noah's been building this ark, and it's finally done. And everyone's like, oh, great, Noah, you're done. Great job. Look, nothing's happening. It's still a boat on dry ground. But then animals start coming everywhere, through their houses, through their farms, whatever, and start 2 by 2 walking to the boat, And then these people are like, what in the world is happening? Maybe Noah's right. And I think that's when they're probably starting to second guess themselves and thinking, maybe Noah's right when he's talking about God. Maybe he's right in having this faith. And so the animals get on. In the second month of Noah's 600th year, rain starts to fall. And for 40 days and 40 nights, rain starts to fall. It says waters erupt from the ground, which I'm thinking probably is like Old Faithful at Yosemite, except for like times 1,000. Because there's got to be tons of water shooting up from the ground. In the ESV, it says the heavens open up. The windows of heaven open up and rain starts to fall for 40 days and 40 nights. And then Noah's stuck on this boat after the rain stops. I mean, there's still a ton of water on the ground. It's 15 cubits past any height of the highest point on earth at that point. And Noah's like finally opens up the window after God tells him to, and he looks out, and you've got to think, oh man, where is the earth? You know, because all he sees is water. And so here's another point where Noah's got to have faith in something that he can't see. He's gone from never knowing rain to only knowing rain. And we know that Noah's got to have the faith and the boldness of his faith in the unseen that God's going to allow these waters to recede and to fall back into place and, you know, come back out on dry ground. And so then a year later, in the second month of Noah's 601st year, I think it's the 17th day it's the first day of the second month of his 601st year, Noah's able to go out on the dry ground. He sent out his dove, it came back, and then it came back with an olive branch, and then it didn't come back at all because there's dry ground. We know the story. And so Noah's able to finally open up the door, walk out on dry ground for the first time in a year with his family, and God says, go, prosper, you know, basically start the world again. He gives Noah the covenant of the rainbow and all that. We know the story. But how does this story apply to our lives? We know that in Hebrews chapter 7 it says, by faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear or in respect, built an ark to save his family. Because of Noah's faith, he got through literally the biggest event in the world that had ever happened. Because of his faith, he got through that. And not only did he get through that, but his family got through it. And so how does that apply to us? And when I was thinking, I mean, there's probably two big applications. The first, and I'll just read it to you, I said, we work and dedicate our lives in the face of ridicule from the wicked world in order to receive heaven once this world is destroyed again. Because we know God has promised to never destroy the world by flood, but we also know that he's promised that one day he's coming back and the world's going to be wiped clean and we're going to be on the right or his left. And you know, that's probably the application we get a lot if we're adults talking about Noah. And that's great, and that is definitely something we need to keep in mind. But I feel like that's just kind of like something we say is like an umbrella faith, like let's just have faith like Noah did and persevere for our whole life. And that's really hard to make specific, and that's really hard to go out into a group and talk about in 10 minutes when we do that. And so I want to talk about something else, maybe something a little more specific that we can tailor to our faith a little more. And that's that we're not unlike Noah in the fact that we have troubles and God's made us a promise. We've got a lot of things in our life, or at least I do, and I'm sure you do too, that are uncertain. In fact, I dare say, if you ever need to talk about being uncertain to somebody, you can talk to me and I'll identify with you. I didn't know I was going to come to Freed until 2 weeks before school started. And from that point on to now, there has been nothing certain in my life. I've changed my major 6 times. You know, I graduate in less than 3 months, and I have no clue what I'm going to do. I don't know what job I'm going to have, if I'm going to have a job. I don't know where I'm going to live, if I'm going to have a place to live. I don't know if I'm going to have to show back up on my parents' front doorstep and say, I'm back. You know, I hope that doesn't happen, but, you know, that's probably going to happen if we're being honest. I don't know who I'm going to marry or if I'll get married. I don't know, you know, if I'm going to be a marketer, because that's what my degree is in, and I have no idea why my degree is in marketing, because I really don't want to be a marketer. I don't know. Maybe I should have stuck with biochemistry a couple semesters ago. But if you want to talk about somebody that's uncertain about their life, you can talk to me and I can empathize with you. But the thing is that I've got to look at Noah's story and I've got to think he was uncertain about things, but he still had faith. And so I guess I should too. You know, obviously, the first verse that came to my mind, at least it was obvious to me, is Romans 8:28. For we know all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose, right? And that's a story we hear a lot of times, or a verse we hear a lot of times. And I think we just kind of, it's become so monotonous, and we've heard it so many times that we just kind of let it pass. But really, we have to know that everything's going to work out. And that is the hardest thing in my life right now to do. Because I stay awake so many nights, sometimes in tears, wondering what I'm going to do next. What am I going to do to fix this situation? What am I going to do to find a job? What am I going to do to hopefully find a wife? What am I going to do for this and that? And I've dug myself into such a hole sometimes that I can't climb out of it, and that I can't do it. And then I'm supposed to look at that and say, all things are going to work together for good for me? But then the problem with that is that I'm not enough, and that I'll never be enough, and you will never be enough until you have the boldness of faith in unseen things. Noah could not have saved himself because he wouldn't have known to build an ark. Noah couldn't have saved himself even if he would have built the ark, because even if he could have built the ark, because he didn't know rain was coming. And so we've got to realize that yes, all things are going to work together for the good of those who serve him, but we've got to do something about that, and we've got to have faith in him through which we are saved. We got to be bold in the things that we don't know, because we do know the promise that God has made us. In Psalm 118, 6-8, it says, "The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me? The Lord is on my side as my helper. I shall look in triumph on those who hate me. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man." Being bold is not about being strong in yourself. It's not about being strong in your family or being strong in your friends. It's about being strong in the Lord. Being bold is knowing that things are going to work out in impossible situations because you've got faith in God and he's told you they're going to. Boldness is shaking off the status quo and getting rid of the social norms like Noah did and building an ark of faith in Jesus. Being bold in faith in the unseen is sometimes closing your eyes and getting on your knees and praying like you haven't done in days. I find myself so often thinking, yeah, I'm bold. But then I realize I've never committed to something so fully that people thought I was crazy. And so again, have you ever committed to something or been so bold in something that people thought you were crazy? We're about to split up and go into groups. And this is a time where we have to share our hearts and speak our minds to each other and ask for prayers of thanks or petition or whatever it is that's going on in our lives right now. And I think an important thing to realize about the story of Noah is that yes, he was bold in faith in the unseen. And we like to think, oh, that's got to be easy for Noah. But there's no way it was easy. There's no way it was easy for him to be building that ark for 75 years with people walking by, making fun of him every hour of every day. But I think something that made it easier for him was the fact that he wasn't alone. For one, he had God, but for two, he had his wife, and he had his 3 sons and their 3 wives. Well, not their 3 wives, I guess they're 1 wife each. So 3 wives, you know what I mean. But he wasn't alone. It was him and 7 others and God. And they're all in it together. And so I think this is a perfect time tonight to go and get in your groups of however many it is. And I'm sure Ben will give you more instruction about that in a second. But being bold isn't easy. And accepting that fact is going to make it a little easier. But then accepting that fact and being bold together with each other is going to make it a whole lot easier. And so I'll leave you with this one more time. Have you ever been so committed to something? Or have you ever been so bold in something that people thought you were crazy? And if not, faith in the unseen is just as good of a thing to be bold in. In fact, it's a better thing to be bold in than anything else.